Well, hello everybody. It is the Remodelers on the Rise show with Kyle Hunt, and I have a guest today. His name is Aaron McGinnis with Craftbuilt. Welcome, Aaron.
Glad to be here, Kyle.
And I told him right before I said, "Any questions for me?" And all he responded with, it was almost like a deep Batman voice, was, "Let's do it. Let's do this." And I'm like, "All right, somebody is ready to rock today," and his name is Aaron. Um, Aaron, before I introduce the topic today, can you just give people a little bit of, this is who you are, kind of where you're at, the type of business you're running, a little, maybe I got this many employees,
Sure.
and just a little bit about, and maybe one fun fact about you, and then I will tell them about the topic today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Aaron McGinnis. I've been in construction and real estate since 2007. We've been doing construction for third party since 2009.
Oh, I've
We've,
never heard it phrased that way. Construction for third party.
yeah.
Hmm,
So when we first started, we were just doing home renovations for ourselves.
yeah,
And people, especially at that time, we were going into the recession. Lots of people were going out of business. And I had friends mostly who were investors who asked us to run their projects for them. And at first we said no, and then we said, well, okay, we like money. And fast forward however many years later, and that is 98% of what we do is
gotcha,
construction for third party. And
gotcha.
in the early years, it was for investors. And then as things turned, it became more and more for homeowners to the point where now it's pretty much all homeowners.
Got it. So I interrupted you doing your intro because that was a phrase I hadn't heard. Now we know what that means. We learned a new phrase. What else do you want the people to know about you?
Right. So Craft Built is a little bit unique. We run new construction, we run renovations, whole house renovations, additions. We do a little bit of a historic restoration work. At any given time, we're running about 19 to 20 projects is about a normal workload for us.
Between
Um,
design and development and production.
right, between
Gotcha.
design and production, exactly. In terms of employees, it's myself and our lead designer, Gina, who handles all things architectural, and our operations manager, Jared. And then we have a pretty unique setup where all of our other regular labor, including office, drafting, um, is all outsourced
Hmm.
and predominantly to other countries.
Wow.
So we leverage the petrodollar pretty hard. Um, so, for example, our office team is mostly in Kolkata. Our drafting resources are distributed, but one of our big ones is in Venezuela.
Well,
So, yeah.
Bailey, you're watching this probably live. Write this down. I feel like we need to have Aaron come back and tell us more about that aspect of the business. That's
I'd love to.
interesting. I wouldn't. Yeah, we'll have to do that. Well, we'll see how this goes first.
That's right. We're still getting to know each other.
Yes, I
Easy,
mean,
easy, Kyle. Buy me dinner
when
first.
when we get off of this call in 26, 27 minutes, and I'm like, well, that was the stinking best guest I've ever had on the Remodelers on the Rise show. Obviously, you'll be back, or I could be saying something else. I mean, the
You could
pressure
be.
is on you. I'm not worried about it all, nor are you. So that's a little bit about Aaron. Thank you so much for being here. So the topic today, it came from a post that Aaron made back in October, specifically October 18th, 2022. He went into this group called Remodelers Community. If you're listening to the recording, or if you're not part of that, if you go to remodelerscommunity.com, you can be part of that. And Aaron, I'm going to read exactly what you wrote.
Mhm.
It starts out like this: to whomever needs to hear this. He is alerting the people to pay attention. I'm going to call myself out for being a longtime idiot. Your words, not mine.
Big time.
So that someone else won't fall victim to the same trap I have. For many years, I've built project calendars from scratch every time we started a job. For many years, our scheduling has not been as tight as I want it to be, and my project managers have always had a hard time using the calendar. It's frustrating for everyone. I've been building construction schedules and to-do templates for several months now. And every time I think there's nothing else I can add to my generic template, I come up with 5 more things to add to it. My project calendars and associated to-do lists are turning massive and comprehensive both those things in a good way, breaking down phases of jobs and issuing timely to-do actions and items to responsible parties. The first couple of jobs that we've run, this is the big point. The first couple of jobs we've run using the templates already show dramatic improvement to organization and scheduling clarity. It's a keen reminder to me that no matter how smart I think I am, I cannot sit down and create a perfect schedule from scratch. It's an unreasonable expectation for myself or anyone else. Templates, templates, templates. So even just people hearing that, there's a lot of value right there. But we're going to unpack kind of what you wrote there. Go back to before you started to say, you know what, it might be smart for me to actually get this all out of my noggin and here so that I'm not starting from scratch. What were you doing before? Let's start there. And then talk about the transition to where you started going.
Yeah. So prior to using scheduling templates, the way that I handled building a calendar would be one of two things. Either at the beginning of a job, I would sit down and try to write the entire job out, start to finish. And that was never as comprehensive or as repeated as I wanted it to be, because things do not spring from your head nirvana like perfectly or the same way each time. And so that led to schedule inconsistencies. Or what happened more often was I would sit down and I would schedule out a couple of weeks of the project. And the sort of projects that we do can easily go on for 12 months. So I would schedule a couple of weeks in advance, and then that calendar would kind of run out and we'd get to a blank calendar. And then I'd try to sit back down and, oh my God, I need to plug in what actually happened. And, you're kind of slumped over the keyboard and you're trying to do this thing. Or I would tell my project manager to do it, and they would do it with various levels of acumen, but usually not very repeatable. And we were just never on the same page about it because we never had an organized methodology of this is what a calendar looks like, and A before B, but not after Z, if that makes any sense.
Yep. Clear as mud.
Clear as mud. Exactly. The scheduling system was clear as mud. And to-dos were something that we would do at a very ad hoc level. Maybe I'd order porta potty over to my office manager. Maybe not if I remembered to do it. More likely, yeah.
And if everybody that's listening to this, if we were in front of them right now, and I said, hey, you're hearing what Aaron's saying here of kind of just in time delivery of the schedule. Maybe you're doing really well and you're a couple of weeks out, and then you get caught up and you get busy and you're like, I don't know what happens next. Who here can relate to that? And you can type in the comments for people who are watching live. Anybody can relate to what he's describing there, kind of the before aspect of that. And I'm pretty sure every hand would go up.
I hope so.
And to use one sports analogy that came to mind as you were explaining it, in NFL playoffs were this weekend, I was watching a couple of the games, and it's like the offensive coordinator, he calls a play, the play happens, and then the quarterback looks over to get the next play, and he's like, oh wait, we're supposed to put in another play, aren't we?
Yeah.
Oh, well, let me look at this now. And it just takes time, and it's clunkier, and it's not well thought out. No, we really get proactive, and we already know the direction we're going and what we're doing a couple plays after this one often.
Exactly that. And the biggest problem that we were running into, and this happened over and over again with us,
Oh, holy crap, Aaron.
Hey.
We got an amen. We got a yep. We got a same here. We got a yes, yes, yes. There's people out there listening to this.
Oh my God, they know my pain.
Yeah.
The biggest problem that we would run into is falling into the trap of what I call scheduling in arrears. So you get done with phase X and you know that you need to start phase Y, but you don't schedule phase Y until phase X is actually done.
Yeah.
And so, phase Y can't really start right after phase X because nobody's available tomorrow. They're available a week from now. And now suddenly you've got a project that's sitting doing nothing because you didn't have a calendar laid out in the first place. And so, crap, what are we doing?
So then around last summer, you're like, wait a minute, I think
enough.
there's a better way to do this.
Right. Well, and
How did it start?
it was actually a flow over from thinking about A, how do we stop scheduling in arrears? And B, I was writing up an estimate. And years ago, I templated our estimates because money, right? And I thought to myself, hang on. When I first started doing this, I would sit down in front of my estimating sheet with a blank page and I would try to write each estimate from scratch, like it was going to spring Nirvana like from my brain perfectly
Hmm.
at the time. And that's not reality. And it kicked me in the wallet over and over again until I learned my lesson. I said, why am I not doing the same thing for calendars? And as a starting point, we took a project and we just tried to calendar the whole thing out. And then we turned that over into a template. And my project manager and I, we basically went ham for about a week every night sitting in front of this thing like, okay, what else?
What else are we
What
missing? What
else
else are we
needs to
missing?
go
Yep.
on the schedule? What can we do to ameliorate this delay? How do we account for calendar for cabinetry delays? And then we started writing out all our to-dos, like who does what, when, how, why. And the thing just kept growing. And literally every time we thought, oh, this is it, we're done, we'd come back the next day and we'd be like, oh, no, wait, here's 5 more things that we forgot. And it was just this like, I'm an idiot. Why did I think that we could do this unique to the project every single time?
Hmm.
It's nonsense.
And interesting. And when we scratch that challenge, that issue even more, and really look at it appropriately and clearly, we start to realize, this mistake that we're dealing with had
Big
a ripple
time.
effect back to here. If we would have
Big
done
time.
this back here, hello, this is remodeling, this is
Mhm.
construction. This isn't some magic bullet. Like, majority of our issues we're experiencing here was because upstream we didn't do this or that, or we were trying to do things last minute. Not all of them, but 80% of them. Well, Kyle, I don't agree with that. It's way more. They're just out of our control. Baloney. The majority are within our control, but it's really, really hard work to create these templates, to wrestle like you're talking about with the scheduling, with estimating, and really stick to our plan and continue to adjust the plan. So it's interesting. Where this came from for you is like, no duh, I'm going to, I'm tired of getting kicked in the wallet on the estimating. I need to create templates, and whether that was a few years before, and then you just applied that same philosophy to scheduling. That's great. I think
Pretty
that's helpful
much.
for people to hear.
Yeah,
Cool. All right. So then you started wrestling with that, and now would be a decent time. Can I just pull up the Gantt chart just to give people a little taste of what
absolutely.
yours looks like? So what we've got here. Let me move a couple things around. We got a little bit of this moving. Now you're just seeing the remodeler. Hang on one second. I'm a professional over here. Don't worry. I'll get this. I'll get this. Da-dun, and share screen. There we go. All right. There we go. So when you were talking about, let me just kind of zoom in on this just a little bit more. When you were talking about, we just started thinking through all the different steps. This is what you're really talking about, isn't it?
It is.
So tell us a little bit about what we're seeing on the left-hand side here.
Yeah, so this is the Gantt chart that Buildertrend kicks out automatically once you build it, right? And Buildertrend is one of those sandbox applications where it doesn't do much until you build it out.
Mm-hmm.
But this is for new construction. This is new construction on slab or on a basement, which is one of the more complicated types of projects that we run. And what you're seeing on the left is all of the individual schedule items. And then what you're seeing on the right is the dependencies created by those schedule items. And then you can kind of use that to look through, okay, what's our critical path look like in
So
this project?
once this happens, these are freed up to work on. Once this
Exactly.
happens, this is freed up to work on.
Exactly. And
Yep.
these things have to fall, for the most part, they need to fall in order.
Yep.
There are some things that you can adjust the order on, but this, we try to figure out, okay, this is the most ideal uh, path forward.
Yeah. So you just mentioned two things. One, builder trends. So,
Mhm.
for people listening to this, whether it be Builder Trend or Co-Construct or Job Trend, whether this be starting with an Excel spreadsheet and listing them out, whether this means, going with a scheduling tool like teamgantt.com, that's a little bit more beside the point. What you kind of described is like any program is a little bit of junk in, junk out until we list out the different key steps involved in this schedule and really think through that and wrestle with it.
Yeah, data hygiene is one of the unsung heroes, I think, of construction and remodeling, and it's a hard job. And
Define that a little bit more. Data hygiene.
So data hygiene is how you keep your information, where you keep it, and how accessible it is, and the way that everyone interacts with it.
Yeah.
So how many people are touching your information, and what sort of fingerprints do they leave on it?
I like that. And then just, each project here. So has it been, now that you've been kind of building out projects with a lot more detail, talk about just some of the just tangible, Kyle, once we started doing this, here are some of the things that we started to see as benefits. Here are some of the results we've seen from this. And then after you share that, I want you to maybe share, here's what's pretty, let's be real here. Here's what's pretty tricky about this. Here's what we're still working through. Share some of the impact that this has had first.
Okay. And hey, first of all, Karen, I see you. I owe you a phone call. I apologize. My year got very busy.
Hey, Karen reached out to you. You didn't call her back?
I know. I'm a terrible person.
Karen's sweet.
She is.
And then Jennifer said, great conversation. You have to button up and create as many efficiencies as possible, including more accuracy and data hygiene. Love that terminology, data hygiene. I'm constantly trying to improve that. It's a struggle. Yeah. And guess what? It's never ending, right? It's never ending.
It really isn't. And so you were asking kind of what are some of the, and if I understood your question correctly, what are the improvements that we've seen and what are the challenges left to go?
Yeah. So starting with that first one.
Yeah. So improvements, the most obvious and clear one have been twofold. Once we built the tool, interacting with the tool was much easier. So rather than just sort of telling my project manager over and over again, update the calendar, we had a clear and concise way to go about updating the calendar. Because the tool was already there, and it's way easier to tell someone take the hammer, drive the nail, than it is to tell someone, look, I need you to forge the hammer, carve the wood for the handle for the hammer, then I need you to forge a nail and use the hammer to bang. No, it's too hard. So just having the tool, so it makes it very easy to go in and adjust calendars. The second thing that was a big advantage for this was we were able to stop scheduling in arrears nearly as much, and we stopped forgetting things. Because I don't care how long you've been in business, sometimes you get to the place where the framers are out there doing their thing and they're like, hey, we need the post bases, and you're like, oh crap, who ordered the post bases? It was me, except I didn't. Oh crap. Now I have to like second day overnight airmail the specialty post base. And when you have a to-do item that says, hey, framing is starting in a week, you need to order those specialty hardware items. Suddenly you're not sucking up $100 of expedited shipping to get your post bases there overnight, or calling up your hardware rep in a panic and going, oh my God, can you have it there in 2 hours, please? So those are big advantages. In terms of,
pause there. So those advantages they carry a lot of weight to them. We stopped forgetting things. That is such a huge aspect of overall profitability, of really keeping our expected versus actual gross profit, of our job costing looking stronger, of our projects going smoother, of our trade partners enjoying working with us more, of our client satisfaction, of us continuing to be able to complete an 8-month project in 8 months or 7 months, instead of, we're saying 8 months, but we know it's going to take all of 10, of being able to wrap up projects. That proactiveness it starts with really strong scheduling. It also starts with, you know, a lot of to-dos. So this was another thing that you had shared, is kind of this, all right, underneath each of those milestones, or however we want to phrase it, you know, we've got a bunch of different to-dos that need to happen. And what I'm seeing here between this and then a little bit more granular, the to-dos, that's what we're seeing here, right?
Mhm.
We're seeing a little bit more granular. As of course, the first time you create this is going to be a lot of work, but as you create it, now all of a sudden, I mean, is it fair to say that 80% of the work is kind of out here, and now we need to decide, all right, do we need this one on here, yes or no? And you still need to do the work on every project to go line by line through and really verify things and adjust things, and add or subtract based on that project, right?
So the way that we set this up was, we've got a couple of different templates, and you can do that. And I'm not plugging Builder Trend, guys. I'm not saying that it's the best tool on earth. I'm saying it's what we use because we've been using it for a long time, guys and gals.
Yeah.
You can set up different templates. And so we've got one for new construction on slab or crawl space. We've got another for new construction on pardon me, slab or basement. We've got another for new construction on crawl. We've got one for an addition. We've got one for interior only. And we actually then broke these out a little bit more, because in different jurisdictions, we have different inspection
Hmm.
programs. And one of the things that was mind blowing was when we actually sat down and we were like, okay, in jurisdiction A, we have this inspection routine, and in jurisdiction B, we have this one.
Wow.
And we realized that jurisdiction B added about 2.5 weeks because of the way the inspections worked. And we were like, oh, crap, we need to be accounting for that in our project timeline expectations that we hand to our customers. Because it was just
And
like,
you
oh,
may have kind of
geez.
intuitively knew that a little bit, but when you looked closer, you
Yeah.
realized, and when you're scheduling it out, you're going, no, we can't start that next thing. We're going to have to really extend this out. And to communicate that to the client, for them to know ahead of time, for us to have all of those things lined up and thought through, is huge.
And so as we built out different templates, we had different to-dos. But yeah, at the beginning of each project, um, we still need to import them and spend a little bit of time like, okay, we're going to be not doing this part, but we will do this part. Um, and so there's still a little prep time, but the amount of prep time is much, much less than
Yeah.
it would be if we were trying to write all this out from scratch. And to
Yeah.
answer a Facebook user's question, ZZ Generic Project Manager. So when you set up a template in Buildertrend, you can set up generic um, generic subcontractor accounts. So for example, if you don't know who the plumber for a project is going to be in a template, maybe you don't want to hard code Antonio's plumbing to every single template. So you set up a generic plumber or a generic project manager. And then when you implement the template, you do a user or a subcontractor replace search and find and replace, and it will replace every instance of the generic with the actual person who's going to be doing that work.
Got it.
So it's just a programmatic way to use a variable instead of a hard coded
Got it. So
subcontractor.
there's a second part of that question earlier. We're going to put that off to the side for a second. I'm going to go a little different way. If you are, I mean, you see all these different remodelers already commenting on this. More will be listening to the recording. If you are a remodeler who kind of sort of is doing some scheduling, kind of organizing it, is, you know, where do I start with this? Let's say they do a lot of full kitchens and that type of work. Let's just kind of stick with that. What are a few of their first steps to really reap the rewards of better scheduling, more proactive scheduling? What are some of the first steps that you'd advise them to take?
So
Put your coach hat on, Aaron.
yeah, so if oh God, I don't have a coach hat.
I know
Isn't
it's
that your
exhausting.
hat? I'm
It's
going to
hard. It's
steal
so hard. It's
yours.
hard work, man.
Oh my gosh. So the way I'm going to go back to what worked for me. And what worked for me was sitting down and saying, based on my experience, what's the first thing that has to happen? What's the first step? Okay, write that down. And I don't care how you write it down, but write it down somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And what's step two? What's step three, what step da 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 on down the list, and decide how do these relate to each other, what has to happen sequentially, and what can happen concurrently. Um, and just start laying that out, even if you did it on a pen and paper to
Mm-hmm.
begin with. Any kind of template, any kind of framework is going to be better than a blank page every single time.
Yep.
Or record the last project that you did. How did that go? And try to kind of write out, well, what happened, then what happened, then what happened, and say, how can I make that better? How can I iterate?
Yeah.
Um,
So what you just shared was just so practical. Just that is where you start.
mhm.
Now, is scheduling, Aaron, you're an experienced remodeler and builder. Is scheduling hard?
um, that is such a a difficult question.
Hmm.
Scheduling can be really difficult if you don't have a team that is responsive to your efforts to schedule.
Yep.
So if I have one member of my team, and that could be a trade partner, that could be a vendor who does really good work and they give me really good pricing, but they're never on time. They don't pay attention to emails, phone calls, text messages, smoke signals, Discord, whatever. Um, they show up when they feel like, and they're just irreverent as to the fact that I'm running a business here. Um, that's going to make my life impossible because I've got one person holding me hostage.
Mm-hmm.
And that person, unfortunately, has either got to get with it or they got to go.
Yeah.
Or if you've got that trade that, they tell you something is going to take 3 days and then it takes 3 weeks. And that's one of the things that tracking and recording your calendars really helps. If I see that we thought that drywall for this project was going to take 5 days or 6 days, and then it took 3 weeks, I got to go back and ask.
Yeah. What happened here?
Exactly like a budgeting question. If something comes in 4 times over budget, you have to go back and ask why.
Yeah.
If something took 4 times longer than it was supposed to, you got to go back and say, what happened here?
Yeah.
Was this something specific to the job, or,
That
or
I love that from a, you coupled it with budgeting. Of course we would go back if that drywall cost another $4,000 compared to what we expected it to be,
Mhm.
especially on this fixed price project. We'd go back and look at that, right? Of course we would. Now we've got to slow down enough to pay attention to that and have to have some job cost systems in place to see it. But you're applying that to scheduling, and what gets measured gets improved to be able to say, I mean, are we even shooting for 6 days on the drywall? Or are we just saying, well, drywall is going to start and we'll see what happens? Professional remodelers that really are scheduling more effectively and stronger are saying this is going to take us 7 days to work on it. By the way, that's 7 business days. So we include the weekend. And when we update this, it's going to be starting on Monday. And we're hoping to have it planned and done next Tuesday. Let's add, because I'm a wise scheduler, let's add another day in there as well, so we have a little buffer. Let's not be the most optimistic. Being the most optimistic scheduler in the world is like being the most optimistic estimator in the world. It's a good way to get really frustrated on the schedule, on the estimating side. It's a good way to lose money. But I like what you're saying there of on a project. This is where, if you're not started at all, start on this project that you're either just starting or that you're even in the middle of, and start tracking. Okay, what's coming up next? When do we think we're going to have that done? All right, I should be able to get the electricians in here. Get it written down. I don't care if it's a whiteboard, if it's a sheet of paper, if it's Builder Trend, if it's anything. Go do the work. When I said scheduling is hard, there's no doubt it's hard, and you brought up a few of the variations. Now let me refine my question a little bit. Is creating the schedule before the project even happens, is kind of laying it out, going step by step, creating that, is that super difficult? Are there a lot of people who would not be able to do that?
No,
Correct. That goes. Yeah.
it's just time.
Yep.
And here's the thing: is that you run a business, especially remodeling. Time is always the thing you don't feel like you have enough of. But Henry Ford had a great saying about farmers who will carry the same bucket of water across the same field every day of their life. And if you would just bury a pipe to shoot water, then you could stop carrying the bucket of water. And scheduling and templates in general are the buckets of water that we carry every
Mm.
single day on every single project. And if you just lay some pipe to carry water for you, then you actually get that time back.
Well,
So the way you got to think about it is, I'm going to spend some time setting up a tool to help me do a thing that I will then not spend nearly as much of my time on in the future. So I save my time, I save my money, and I get a better result.
mm,
So you've got to change the way you think about how
that's
you
really
sit
good.
down and write tools.
That's really good. The story you were sharing earlier of like, my project manager and I, we took a first stab at it. We thought about it. You guys spent combined 42 hours on that over those few weeks, right?
Probably
40, let's
so,
say
yeah,
40 hours on that. The thing, when we look at that over the course of the next year, you've already paid yourself back in spades, let
easily.
alone going forward. Every 10 hours you spend on scheduling is saving us double. And then even more so, every hour you spend on really locking in a template is going to save you 10x quickly. So that's kind of what you're describing there, is like, invest that time and it's going to end up saving you more and making you more in the future.
Well, and I tell you something else that we hadn't really counted on, but the degree to which when customers see, and we disclaim heavily to our customers, at the beginning, this is an idealized schedule.
Yeah.
Expect it to change. We've got our contract terms. It's going to take that long, but this is what we're going to be working off of. The level of customer confidence when they see a 6 month or an 8 month
Yeah.
schedule laid out in front of them on day one is like, phew.
Yeah. And to use that even in your sales process, to use that in content creation. We're selling the process.
That's a
We
good
are
idea.
selling the process. We're not selling just one little finished beautiful picture at the end. See, this is what we're selling the process. And yeah, the know, like, and trust, and especially the trust that happens when they're able to see that. They're like, these guys know what they're doing. Somebody posted about that in the Remodelers Community the other day of like, how many of you are actually sharing your schedule with your clients? And while there was a lot of hesitation, a lot of people were like, I used to not want to, but I've realized that the more I share it with them with the disclaimers, the more I share it with them, the better it goes, the smoother it goes. It actually answers a lot of questions that they have. Karen said, man, Aaron, again, it's such great analogies, makes it sound even more no-brainer to do this. No more excuses for not doing it. And that's where, Aaron, you did a great job of explaining, like, here's where we'd step. Here's what I did. We looked at some examples of it. And where I was really leaning with the, is this hard? Is this doable? It's time. We need to stop making excuses about it. We need to invest some time in it and realize that every hour we're investing in our scheduling templates, or templates in general at all, is time that is extremely well spent, that's going to save you time, frankly, in the short term, let alone the long term.
Big time.
Hmm.
Get it? But I'm ching. Big time. Ha ha. Thank you very
Wow,
much.
man, that went right over my head, and then I thought about it. I'm like, this guy knows what he's doing and how he's talking about. So that was the 30 minutes goes fast, doesn't it, my friend?
It does. It
Yes.
does.
Now, if I were to say, Aaron, you shared kind of the story of where you were and how you got a little more organized with this. You showed some examples of what this looks like. You gave people some starting areas of, here's kind of where you would start, and here's kind of where we got. And along the way, I think we gave some motivation. Even Phil Bennett says good stuff. Awesome. If you were to leave the people with another thought that maybe you wanted to share, or if you wanted to emphasize something that we already did, what would come to mind for that as we wrap up?
Look at everything that you do, uh, and everything that your employees do, and think really hard about, how can I build a tool to reduce repetitive work? And how can I build tools to take creative work and turn it into repetitive work?
Hmm.
Because the more repetitive work you have, the lower your labor burden can be. And the more you eliminate repetitive work, the lower your labor burden can be.
Hmm.
And one of the great killers, especially in our industry, is labor burden. And the one that few people really think about very hard is the office labor burden, because so many of us don't really pay ourselves correctly.
Hmm.
And so we just say, oh, I'm just going to do it myself. And I don't care if I get paid $2 an hour because it's fine. Crush that idea right out of your head and figure out how to take all of your office work and make it more streamlined, make it easier, and then automate the hell out of it.
I like it.
Tools, systems, yes,
Yep.
absolutely, Phil.
Yep. Cool. Somebody else said thanks you for sharing experience. And I would say since it's my show, I choose. Sometimes I give the guest the final word. Other times I'm like, ain't nobody gonna stop me from giving the final word.
I think you should have
So
the final word.
number one, excellent job, and I am very interested and curious to hear. Wait a minute. So you got your drafts resource, you got some office help, you got some design help. So we'll definitely have that show to hear more about that if you are willing. And I think the way one more, I think it's more about how you use that tool. It creates the system, right?
So I sort of use the term tool and system interchangeably,
Okay.
which maybe that's not quite the right. I don't know. We could probably split hairs on terminology here.
Yep.
So I'm not quite sure what the question
Yeah, so
is.
I think now that they know you're kind of using it synonymously, I think it's fine. Yeah, I think where I would leave this is this topic of scheduling is one that in my years of coaching for 15 years now, working with a lot of remodelers, scheduling is something that is a lot of times thorn in the side, Achilles heel, just a challenge that doesn't seem to ever get on top of. And I've seen a lot of people conquer it and really be proactive with it. And so where I'd kind of leave it at this is, it starts with doing it. It starts with there's a project coming up. Kick butt like you never have kicked butt before with the stinking detail on that schedule. And shut the part of your head off that says, well, this is just gonna be messed up in 2 days anyway. Stop it. Create that thing, lay that thing out, proactively reach out to your trade. Say, we are going to try to execute this project on the best schedule that we've done in a long time. And by the way, a best schedule doesn't necessarily mean the fastest. It means the smartest. It means the carefulest. It means the most detailed. It means realistic. That happens often where we get too optimistic. Start with it, create that schedule. And when you commit some time and energy to that, and you see, like Aaron was describing, the ripple effect of benefits of not scheduling in the rear, but being really proactive with it, you're going to realize this is an unlock. The time that you spend on this is a huge unlock to reducing stress, to increasing employee satisfaction, trade partner satisfaction, client satisfaction, and also it's going to help tweak and dial in your overall profits. So thank you for sharing your insight into this. Appreciate it, Aaron, and we'll talk again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kyle.
Thanks. Take care, everybody.